SCP-3930 does not exist. Thanks for watching. Now check out SCP. The following information is only known to 7 living people. Even those actively guarding this anomaly will never know this information. Every single person who believes they are aware of the existence of SCP-3930 has the potential to increase its danger. SCP-3930 has been given the risk class Critical, the highest possible risk class for an anomaly, meaning that individuals nearby will invariably be exposed to acute, life-threatening harm, and that these effects cannot be mitigated. You learn about SCP-3930 at your own risk, with the knowledge that this awareness puts your life at hazard. Someday soon, you may be forced to make the ultimate sacrifice for the good of all life and matter in the universe. That is why it is imperative that you know one essential thing. SCP-3930 does not exist. Now with that out of the way, we have only one question for you. Can you hear the screaming? It was when Dr. Vasiliev heard the screaming that he and his ragtag team of scientists knew it was already over. The year was 1971, and Dr. Vasiliev's team was stationed at a highly secretive Soviet research outpost near what would later be established as the Russian town of Usinsk within the Komi Republic. As far as Dr. Vasiliev was concerned, they were dead men already. Well, that's not entirely accurate. To be dead is to be something, and the men that had once been stationed with them but were here no longer could not be considered something at all. Their brush with the immensely powerful and classified anomaly later known as SCP-3930 had robbed them of their very existence. Now Dr. Vasiliev knew that he and the few remaining men stationed at the base with him would be next. The Soviet government had dispatched a detachment consisting of around 100 soldiers and scientists to investigate the anomaly in the Komi Republic. As far as they could tell, it appeared to occupy a 1-kilometer square area within a forest. But to say that it really occupied anything would be a stretch. And out of the over 100 men who had been dispatched, now scarcely 30 remained. Observation teams had been sent into the anomalous zone to collect data on what exactly they were dealing with. But each time, it seemed as though the researchers were doomed to know less and less about what they were investigating. From a distance, the area didn't even appear to be anomalous. It looked simply like a continuation of the forest, complete with the expected flora, fauna, and even some distant evidence of human habitation, like an abandoned building. But without fail, nobody who had ever seen the building up close had ever returned. Thanks to SCP-3930, they had simply ceased to be, because simply put, when you introduce something into nothing, then nothing wins. Dr. Vasiliev had seen too many good men disappear into oblivion, and soon it would be his turn too. But first something horrible would crawl out of the zone. Something that shouldn't exist. Something that didn't exist. Something that will never exist. And yet, here it was. In science, the observer effect is a dreaded phenomenon. All experiments involve the observation of phenomena to collect data and then prove or disprove a hypothesis. But the observer effect describes the frustrating scenario where the mere act of observing a phenomenon alters it, reducing the usefulness of the data. A common example of this in mundane life is checking the pressure of your car or bike's tires. To do this, you need to let out some air, thus changing the pressure. But pressure holds a very different meaning when you're working with what might be the universe's largest patch of nothing. Because of their prime directive, namely researching the anomaly, Dr. Vasiliev and his fellow scientists were effectively forced to observe SCP-3930, and 3930 apparently doesn't like that. The scientists only noticed sounds at first, barely perceptible little screeches that could easily be written off as your mind playing a trick on you. And in a sense, it is. But around SCP-3930, the tricks played by the mind become a lot more practical than anywhere else. What started as sounds soon came to take on a visual form as more people became aware of the anomaly and made futile attempts to observe it from the outside. These scattered visual and audio forms soon became nicknamed screamers, for their horrific, hateful wailing. Dr. Vasiliev and his team believed that despite the extremely hostile nature of the anomalies, they had no way of ever leaving the anomalous zone. That belief was soon proved wrong, and not long after, only 10 researchers remained. It seemed that the last of Dr. Vasiliev's hope died with the lost men, but there was some good news at least. With only 10 left to observe the SCP-3930 anomaly, the screamers began to disappear and the anomalous zone became stable once more. 10, it seemed, was the upper limit of observers that could distantly engage with SCP-3930 before all hell broke loose. And then the SCP Foundation arrived. By the time they reached the long-since defunct research outpost, Dr. Vasiliev was the only one left. The final members of his team had sacrificed themselves by walking into the void and joining non-existence. Vasiliev himself remained for only one purpose: to tell the Foundation what he knew, what they needed to know, before bowing out into SCP-3930 himself, along with however many of the Foundation personnel needed to go to keep the number of active observers at a nice, clean 10. That is the burden of knowing. And accepting that burden is to accept that you may one day need to become unknown in order to protect your fellow human beings from the horrors that lay within. But what is SCP-3930, and what are these so-called screamers that lurk within? We have the answers to these questions. The only question for you is whether you're ready to take on the grave responsibility of knowing too. SCP-3930 does not exist. That isn't just a cover-up by the O5 Council. It doesn't not exist in the official capacity. It is, quite literally, the world's largest patch of nothingness, and anything that enters it is doomed to become nothing as well. It is a difficult concept to grasp because fundamentally, all language was built as a tool to communicate concepts that, on some level, exist, and SCP-3930 does not qualify. Close your eyes for a moment. Seriously, do it. And try to imagine nothing. What do you see? An infinite space of pure darkness? A white void stretching on into infinity? We're sorry to inform you that neither of these counts as being truly nothing. Though darkness may be the absence of light, to see that blackness is to still see something. The darkness even implies the existence of light. The same can be said for the white void. For such a thing to exist, we need both the concepts of the color white and the idea of a void. These are perhaps the lowest bars for existence imaginable, but SCP-3930 doesn't meet them. It is well and truly nothing. Nothing at all. And because it is nothing, its containment procedures are largely just a matter of information control. If nobody knows about it, the threat is contained. If ever someone just happened to wander in, they would stop existing, so the problem would take care of itself, as callous as that sounds. On its own, the anomaly would technically be harmless, but when mixed with humans, things become a whole lot more complicated. You see, unless you have the misfortune to run into SCP-3930, you will spend your life without ever having to encounter true nothingness. Even when you die, the matter that comprises your body and the energy that comprises your consciousness will remain. They will just be transferred into other forms. Humans have no reason to ever encounter nothingness, and thus we have no physiological or psychological equipment to truly observe and comprehend nothingness. When we're given a true blank, our instinct is to fill it. And that right there is the true danger of SCP-3930, and the very reason we have to deal with screamers, or as you may know them, pattern screamers. That's right. If this whole setup seemed awfully familiar to you, it's because SCP-3930 is the absolute global epicenter of pattern screamers, the hateful entities we've encountered before in anomalies like SCP-000. Nothingness is the natural environment of pattern screamers. But because SCP-3930 is the only place where true nothingness exists on our layer of reality, it's also the only place where pattern screamers are able to directly interact with humans if they become powerful and defined enough, often to deadly and terrifying results. Pattern screamers are an incredibly difficult concept to wrap your head around sometimes, but allow us to explain. Close your eyes again, and this time, Picture a clown. Not a specific clown like Ronald McDonald or Pennywise. You have to make up your own clown. Let's say he's got green hair, a big blue rubber nose, a wide smile, and polka dot clown shoes. The other details are up to you. Go as simple or as complicated as you like, as long as it's an entirely new clown you've never seen in real life. Now hold the image in your head. Really focus on it. You can even use your imagination to make him dance or walk around. Fundamentally, this clown does not exist. Aside from being the product of chemical and electrical processes in your brain, if this is indeed an entirely new clown in your mind, it exists only on the level of thought. Now imagine if this clown in your mind was somehow aware of the fact it wasn't real, and that it was only the product of your imagination. Imagine that this clown is infuriated by that fact. It despises you for bringing it into being, doomed to be a concept straddling existence and non-existence. Imagine this clown wants to hurt you. It really, 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 really wants to hurt you with every fiber of its non-existent being. That right there is a pattern screamer. And the frightening thing about SCP-3930 is that if enough people observe it directly, these pattern screamers can become real. They can crawl out of nothing, and then they can show you exactly how they feel about you bringing them into existence. And when they're done, you'll probably regret ever existing in the first place. Think of them as hostile, sentient hallucinations capable of reaching maximum power around SCP-3930. This is because when humans are given a lack of stimulus, their minds simply create their own. This is why people believe they see the forest simply continuing into the anomalous zone. It's the only way the mind can comprehend what's going on here. It's like the phenomenon of pareidolia. Humans have a natural tendency to see patterns in things, even if they were never really there. It's from these very patterns that the pattern screamers gain both their form and their name. They're monsters that we create, cursed to live hellish half-existences, and they hate us for it. Dr. Vasiliev described SCP-3930 as a kind of hateful mirror that reflects back the ugliest shards of our own minds. First broken in the futile quest to comprehend the true nature of nothingness. Thousands have likely been lost inside SCP-3930, if we can even call them lost, as lost implies that something is still out there, somewhere even if we never actually find it. This cannot be said for the victims of SCP-3930. They are nowhere and nothing. They can't be found again because there is nothing to find. The Foundation has used D-Class personnel to perform manned recon missions into SCP-3930, feeding information back to the few members of Mission Control permitted to be aware of SCP-3930's existence without immediate termination. The D-Classes have ventured well into the heart of nothingness, even reaching and entering the building that can be seen in the distance. There they found messes of haunting inconsistencies. The place looks like it's been abandoned for decades, but also has evidence of recent habitation. Doors and windows move. Curtains and hallways go on forever. They feel a sound in their ears that's similar to the screech of TV static. No, not a screech. Really more of a scream. It's always in that moment that the realization hits them. They don't exist. Not anymore. And they haven't for a little while now. They're just a few scattered memories of the Foundation researcher talking to them, reflected back by SCP-3930's hateful mirror. And moments later, they're gone, almost like they were never here at all. So if ever anyone asks you what is SCP-3930, you know there's only ever one answer. SCP-3930 does not exist. Now check out the Lost SCP, SCP-000, and SCP-096 look at a picture of Shy Guy in space, the Shy Guy questions and theories to delve into more of the SCP Foundation's deepest, darkest secrets.